we might even prevent the development of deadly variants. But there is another important uh, reported in literature. These are anecdotal reports. Sometimes these vaccines help patients who had a COVID before and suffering from long COVID symptoms. And if they take COVID vaccine, their post-COVID symptoms improve. This is what is been reported by few patients. But this is anecdotal reports, is not a study as such. But a lot of people are reporting that if they take vaccine, COVID vaccine, their post-COVID symptoms disappear. And there are lots of theories being put forward to explain how this vaccination helps in post-COVID patient is probably these antibodies divert the inflammatory mechanism which is persistent in these patients away from uh, uh, to away from these cells and help in fighting another infection insult. And that is the reason, that is one way of how these COVID vaccines help in post-COVID symptoms. So this is an upcoming literature. So this is just I cited few days ago. But the real threat today is actually the variants. And this is a chart from Washington Post that why the countries all around the world are going for genome sequencing. Now, Australia has very say would minimal cases, Australia and New Zealand, even less than my wellness center at one point of time. But look at the genome sequencing they are doing. They are doing almost more than half their cases, they are sequencing, genome sequencing and trying to identify the variants very, very early. United States, which is similar in case of population and size, somewhat similar, is sequencing 0.3% at this point of time, and we are not in this chart yet. So government is trying to sequence all those samples and try to find out these variants, and these variants are going to be the real threats in future, and vaccination is what is going to take care of these variants to some extent. Now, what preparation is required for vaccination? There is no preparation required. Just get vaccinated. This is the simplest advice that you can give to most patients. Just get vaccinated. There is no preparation as such required. But there are small groups of patients, very small group of patients, maybe less than a person, or maybe very few in your own wellness center, which may require a careful thinking. So which are these patients? And now this is out of experience. I'll just, somebody is unable to hear. Mr. Amarnath, just check your headphones, your uh, bandwidth, because nobody else is complaining. Everybody is able to hear. So patients with significant multiple comorbidities, if you have 3 or 4 comorbidities, for example, you have a CCF patient with a diabetes, with CKD and electrolyte abnormalities. These are the patients who may require some amount of assessment. Similarly, patients who are on a lot of steroids, diuretics, also has other comorbidities. Patient who never had any blood test in life, very rare to find in our wellness center, but there are few. So this patient should be, at least asked to do a CBC or a sugar level. This is important because post-COVID, most people get some adverse events. And so if you know the baseline, it helps in management of those adverse events confidently. So that's why a simple test may be advised, not very compulsory. If you have a patient who just showed a significantly changing recent health status, for example, a patient who is undergoing workup for chest pain, the diagnosis is not finalized. If you have a patient, say, who just recovered from hospitalization and half of the diagnosis is done, half of the diagnosis is not done, he still has some symptoms. So such category of patients who have recent change in health status should be at least their full diagnosis or full stability be achieved before going for vaccination. So except for this very small percentage of patients, all other patients, no preparation is required. Side effects. Now everybody of us know what are the side effects of these vaccines. So local side effects, not a major problem. Little bit of myalgia, fever is an important thing to remember, that it occurs within 48 hours, but very rarely lasts more than 48 hours. So any fever post-vaccination which settles within 48 hours should not be bothered much. The paracetamol is what is required. Important is lymphadenopathy, especially in a patient who has malignancy. Say, for example, patients who have CA breast or had CA breast, they are stable now and they take a vaccine. So, some axillary lymphadenopathy, transient in nature, may occur in these patients. So, you have to warn these patients, because development of new lymph nodes in a cancer patient, it will send alarm bells ringing in their mind, because they've been told by their oncologist or physician to watch for such swellings. So if they develop, they, and if it is a transient, should not be a worry, but they should be pre-warned before taking vaccination that you may get a transient lymphadenopathy and need not be confused with the worsening of underlying cancer. Very uncommon, but we should know these side effects, that dizziness, anorexia, pain, excessive sweating, pruritus, rash. Why we should know these uncommon? Because these complaints, the patient is going to come to the wellness center, and we usually tend to go in for routine causes, but asked vaccination history in such patients, because if it has a rarer side adverse effect of the vaccine, no further investigations will should be done in these patients. Now, this was one of the questions raised by one of the doctor on the our group, that if you take a vaccine and develop a fever, so what should be the management? So if there is a fever and myalgia which occurs within 48 hours and resolves within 48 hours, most likely it is a post-vaccine adverse event, which is very common, and this should not be investigated. But if the fever lasts more than 48 hours, there is an associated loss of taste or a cough, or there is a low saturation on pulse oximetry, this patient should be told to do RT-PCR. And if the RT-PCR is positive, definitely you do the management of a COVID-like patient. But if the RT-PCR is negative, you can wait for another day or two, may run a lab, or may think about other causes of fever. So any post-vax fever for say 48 hours, more than 48 hours, should be uh, investigated or treated little differently. Now, this is one more query which will come very often to you now. What to do after you get a COVID infection between the two doses of COVID vaccine? So you had our first dose, then if you have a COVID infection, then the second dose need need to be postponed by 4 weeks, or till you are fully recovered from the COVID infection. So the recovery may be depending on your severity of illness. Maybe if it is a mild infection, you will recover say within 2 weeks. But if you require oxygen, or anybody going on an NIV or ventilator, the recovery will be prolonged. So this patient, uh, the second dose should be postponed till the full recovery. So this is what the advice is if you get a COVID infection, SARS-CoV infection in between the two dosages. Now, this is one more query which came from one of the doctor, that he took a first dose and developed a localized urticarial skin reaction to the first dose. So there was a very big wheal the doctor developed on the deltoid after the first dose. So what he should do for the second dose? First dose, there is a urticarial skin reaction. Then the second dose must be taken with 30 minutes observation, which anyway they are doing. But nowadays these guidelines may not be followed in all those centers because of the rush. But the second dose should be taken in a setting, hospital setting with full resuscitation uh, facility, maybe with a ICU available, maybe a physician trained in management of such uh, severe anaphylaxis is there. There in that facility the second dose should be taken. Don't take second dose in a very primitive facility of vaccination. And this is the guidance from the NHS UK. Those people who have hypersensitivity to any NSAIDs like aspirin, ibuprofen, or antibiotics or sulfa drugs can have Covishield, can also receive Covishield without any contraindication. Of course, they should prefer to take the vaccination in a hospital setting where the resuscitation facilities are available. But usually, a single drug adverse event in the past should not be a problem for Covishield vaccine. This is the guidance. So even if you have multiple allergies, say to the drugs or injections, as long as the content of the molecule or the drug is not from the vaccine content. For example, if you take Covishield, if there is no polysorbate 18 that, then there is no need to worry. You can go ahead with the vaccination wherever there is a resuscitation facilities available. Not everybody will get reaction. So this is one article from JAMA which analyzed events, adverse events post vaccination. But this is only with the Moderna, and I'm just going to check the chat. Dr. Reena, please hold on your question. We'll take this question at the end of the presentation. So they have compiled these adverse events, that those who had prior anaphylaxis and also allergies, they got vaccinated, but the incidence of adverse anaphylaxis was to the first dose was quite high. But if you don't develop to the first, the adverse reaction or anaphylaxis or allergic reaction to the second dose is very less. And all these patients underwent Moderna or the Pfizer vaccination. Some required management of anaphylaxis, adrenaline was given, but there are no deaths. So preferably all these patients should take uh, in a hospital setting. So around 32% in that paper, 66 case reports with a prior episode of anaphylaxis to various agents like vaccines, contrast media, sulfa drugs, penicillin, latex, walnuts. They underwent these vaccination. So the overall incidence was around 2 per 1 million, so which is not very high. So there is no absolute contraindication, even if you have a past history of allergic reaction. So it is reassuring data. So what about now other vaccines? Say many of our patients take pneumococcal vaccine or influenza vaccine for their comorbidities. So the guidance in this regarding is that there should be minimum of 14 days gap between your COVID vaccine and the any vaccine, say influenza. This is a guidance from UK. The Australian guideline is little different. They say even 7 days is sufficient. But by mistake, if they have taken on the same day or without the gap of 7 or 14 days, they say you need not panic, nothing happens. There could be some suboptimal response to one of the vaccine. So you should advise the patient a gap of 2 weeks between the two vaccination. So another category is patients who have adult congenital heart diseases. Now there are very few patients like this, those who have ASD or VSD. So did the American Cardiology Society says that the higher the symptoms of any congenital heart disease patient, he should be a high priority for vaccination. So it is not a contraindication. So they should be vaccinated. Higher is the NYHA class, go for early vaccination. So adult congenital heart disease, no contraindication. So the heart transplant societies and the cardiac transplant societies, they all recommend that they should wait at least a month after the transplant surgery to receive the COVID-19 vaccines. Of course, such patients will not be coming to us. They will be going to the super specialist for advice. Uh, Whenever possible, they should be vaccinated before the transplant. But if the transplant does happen, the vaccination should be after a month. There is another category of patients, inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. What is the guidance about these? So this is another guidance taken from the literature that they should be vaccinated, no contraindication. Even to these all types of vaccines they can go for, including Moderna, the Pfizer, and the AstraZeneca. They should not be deferred because they are receiving all these immune modifying therapies like sulfadiazines, or maybe azathioprine, or oral steroids, or luminal steroids. And the only problem is the vaccine efficacy may be little suboptimal. And because these patients were never included in trials, nobody knows the answer, what will be their immune status post vaccination. So this is the only thing that we can tell our patients. Now, this is a very important question that most patients will ask. We have loads of patients who are on anticoagulant. So if the patient is going very regular follow-up with the treating physician, doing INR regularly, and the last INR is within the therapeutic range, there is no need to do a fresh INR before the vaccination. But somebody who has never done the INR or has missed because of the lockdown and has come after many days, please do their INR, and that INR should be less than 4. And only when the INR is less than 4, you can go for vaccination. The needle that they should tell the nurse injecting should be as 23 gauge or 25 gauge, and the firm pressure applied at the injection site. This may not happen in a very busy vaccination center. You can tell the patient to do themselves, put the pressure for 5 minutes, no rubbing. And if there is hematoma, not to worry. But I usually tell all my patients that hematoma, some mild hematoma is going to occur at that site, not to worry, and so that they don't come back with that hematoma to show you in the OPD. So you can pre-warn them. So this is the guidance from the again the Green Book from the NHS UK. So those patients who are novel oral anticoagulants, we are not doing INR, especially those who are on, say, heparin sometimes or fondaparinux. The advice is they can delay the dose on the day of the vaccination until after the injection is given, but not to miss the dose. So you can just delay the dose after the vaccination so that they are in a window where the action of the anticoagulant is minimal and they get vaccinated and then take the injection. There is no change in antiplatelet required, absolutely not required to withhold any of the antiplatelets. But this is what happens. This is one of our patient who got vaccinated. He was not on anticoagulant. He was simply on a dual antiplatelet, aspirin and clopidogrel 75, not a very high dose, old man. But see, this is what hematoma can occur. So pre-warn them, and you just need a reassurance. It will resolve on its own. But these things are going to happen. This should not deter the patient from taking the vaccine at all. They should be pushed for vaccine, uh, neglecting these minor issues of hematoma. So this was one of my patient who had just 3 days ago a hematoma on the arm. So this might have happened because the maybe large bore needle or the proper instruction not given to the patient to hold the injection site for 5 minutes with a firm pressure. We have plenty of population of diabetes and all diabetics should preferably get vaccinated as early as possible whenever their turn comes up. Very few small instructions on this: that avoid injecting insulin around vaccine site. So don't inject on that day at least or for next day, because the area becomes very painful, it becomes inflamed, it may interfere with the insulin absorption, the sugar may get fluctuate. So not to take insulin around that vaccine site, because some of the patients like to take in the deltoid region. No glucose sensor should be put around vaccine site. This is just to avoid any aberrations in the readings because of the inflammation. Most patients will have some amount of vomiting or diarrhea. They may not be able to take their regular oral hypoglycemics. Their requirement of insulin or OHA may fluctuate for few days. So the advice to these patients should be check your BSL with a glucometer and expect some minor increase in the BSL, which should not bother much for few days because of the inflammation that the vaccination sets. So these are the few instructions for diabetes patients, but no contraindication and no special preparation. About hemophilia, those who we may not get this patient, but if anybody's relative or friends have this hemophilia, so the guidance is that if they are on a prophylactic factor concentrate 8, should have their normal dose prior to the injection. And again, the same instruction, they can have intramuscular injection with the same precaution, small needle, 5 minutes pressure, and advice should be sought from their own hematologist if they